Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second year of Tech Connect Thursday, powered by WEtech Alliance, in partnership with Invest WindsorEssex, FedDev Ontario, St. Clair College, University of Windsor, as well as Workforce WindsorEssex. So first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sam Branton, here from WEtech Alliance. I am the Manager of Talent Programs as well as Engagement. I couldn't be more excited to welcome i-50 to the virtual stage today. So before we start off, I'd like to talk a little bit about i-50. So they are a pre-series A deep tech startup that provides end-to-end insights for lean manufacturing. They elevate manual operations by using AI Vision Copilot. So this company was formed in 2018 in Silicon Valley and currently works with global manufacturers like Arcelor, Mattel, and Suzuki. i-50 is backed by some of the most prominent seed funds in North America, as well as Sterling Road Ventures, Hustle Fund, Industrious VC, Seraph Group, and their Canadian HQ is located right here at the epicenter, right here in Windsor. So to provide you a little bit of background into Tech Connect Thursdays, Tech Connect Thursday is an opportunity for those who are curious about working in tech and or those who are working in tech to make connections and learn about exciting career opportunities as well as industry sector insights, trends, and initiatives happening within our region as well as beyond. So our goal is to help you meet some of the fastest growing tech and innovation companies, people, and organizations that are leading the way across the entire tech industry. Ultimately, at the end of this, we hope that Tech Connect Thursday will help plug you into the Windsor-Essex and beyond tech scene. To date, we have hosted 9 Tech Connect sessions featuring 10 businesses and organizations with over 650 students as well as professionals engaged. So to be considerate and accommodate everyone joining us today from across the region, you may not be able to see all the attendees, but you will have an ample opportunity to engage with them during our Q&A session. So a couple things to run through just before we get started. So if you have a question or you want to join the discussion, you can use the chat feature located at the bottom of the video window to engage with attendees, both myself as well as Khizer. And if you have a question, you may submit questions at any time throughout the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. You can also upvote questions that you want to be answered if you agree with what this person is asking. If you have any technical difficulties, please send a message in the chat box and we'll be happy to help. And finally, just a last note, this presentation is being recorded and a video file as well as relevant links to this session will be available on our YouTube channel and included in an attendee follow-up email. Okay, so now that all that's out of the way, I am pleased to introduce our guest from i-50, Khizer. So we can dive right into the questions if that's all right with you. So first off, you can maybe start by telling me a little bit about yourself and your company and what sets you apart from others within your industry.
Yeah, so thank you, Sam, for hosting us today. So I'm Khizer Hayat. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer at i-50. My background is in AI, robotics, and manufacturing. So I received my education in AI and robotics and then ended up working in manufacturing, optimizing a lot of production processes, first for Toyota and then a company called Schlumberger. And then I joined the startup world first at a supply chain analytics startup and then as the co-founder of i-50. So that's a quick overview of myself. At i-50, as you mentioned, what we're doing is elevating human performance in manufacturing using artificial intelligence. And the way we do it is we've developed this proprietary computer vision platform that measures the interactions between humans, machines, and materials on a production floor to provide insights to manufacturing personnel so that they can take action quickly, increase their profitability, catch errors quickly, and make sure that their operations are flowing as smooth as possible. One of the key differentiators for us is that we are able to measure the interactions between humans, machines, and materials, where most other competitors that we know of focus on only one aspect. And if you know manufacturing, the single aspects are good, but the true value comes from these complex interactions of humans with machines and materials. And that's where we kind of set ourselves apart. And that's our biggest differentiator.
Very cool. As someone who has worked in a past life in some sort of a manufacturing setting, I can definitely see how this would be advantageous for a company. Can you tell me a little bit about how you landed remotely within Windsor?
Absolutely. So it's a funny story where we started off in Silicon Valley. We got formed there, raised our initial investment there, and then we wanted to kind of grow the company and hire engineers. And during that time, we met the Ontario Trade Commissioner's office in San Francisco, and they produced this report for us about why it makes so much sense to move to Ontario and set up the engineering team there and the support available. So I took a tour of different cities in Ontario, Toronto, Hamilton, Windsor, even London. And we landed up in Windsor primarily because of its proximity to the US, the auto manufacturing hub in the US, so massive market there. Windsor itself is kind of an automotive hub in Canada, and it kind of spans all the way up to Oshawa, so it's easily accessible. And secondly, we got a lot of local support as a startup. So versus Toronto, where there's tons of startups and the support kind of it's split up, and there's kind of you're still screaming for attention. Here we got a lot of red carpet service, and we got in touch with a lot of the local government agencies as well as agencies like WEtech, funded by FedDev, that helped us grow the business, get access to talent, and even help us with increasing our markets and expanding across different countries.
Awesome. So it sounds like it was a good move for you guys.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So just a little bit more about your company culture. Can you tell me in a few words, sort of what it looks like to work at i-50?
Yes, so the four keywords are commitment, community, curiosity, and community, if I didn't use that word. So essentially it is challenging, it's rewarding, and it's just a lot of fun, but it comes with uncertainty as well because you're in a startup environment.
I was just going to say, typical within the startup world. So
Yes.
awesome. So what does a typical day look like for either yourself or an employee of your company?
So every day is very different because you're dealing with new challenges on a day-to-day basis, figuring out how to solve new issues, onboarding new clients, or just figuring out new strategies. So for myself, every day is split between meeting with my team members, working on different client projects, solving different problems for different clients, and then coming up with technical strategies to improve a product or improve kind of the marketing aspect of our solution. So it varies a lot, and every day is very different. But one of the things is like every day we learn something new, and almost every day something new is implemented, which is quite fun.
Mhm. It sounds like a quite engaging place to work, even if you're in the same role for a while. If your day to day might change to keep things exciting, which is good. So if you were to be hiring, what type of tech talent are you looking for if you were hiring to join your team?
Absolutely. So we kind of separate out or split our tech talent into multiple buckets. So our entire product pipeline is quite complex. At the base level, we have infrastructure engineers who develop tools to make our engineers more productive. And for those sort of roles, we're looking for people with experience in deep understanding of computer science, as well as an understanding of how languages like C++ work and function, but at a production level. Then you move on to the deployment phase, and we're looking at people who have experience in machine learning or deep learning, ideally computer vision, having understanding of those sort of technologies, but also the frameworks that are utilized, such as PyTorch, maybe TensorFlow, but more PyTorch slash and Python that we utilize. And then it's the web dev side where you're doing a lot of development of our UI, optimizing our user experience. And for those sort of roles, we look at some experience in web development. It doesn't have to be formal school education. It can just be programs or certificates that you receive from boot camps. But seeing your work is very helpful. And then for those sort of roles, we look at knowledge of frameworks like React, Node.js, of course, HTTP, HTML, CSS being the most common types. And then we require GitHub on everyone's resume so we can evaluate the work and be able to see your portfolio before we go forward with the interview.
All very good things to know. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so what do you look for when you are hiring? I feel like you sort of touched a little bit on that, but how does somebody stand out within the interview process?
Absolutely. So our interview process kind of looks at multiple areas, one being skill set, but I wouldn't say that's the absolute area that we consider when hiring for super technical roles. We look at people who are strong team players, who have a growth mindset, and who can easily adapt to different situations. One of the reasons being that in a startup, you might come in with a certain skill set, but if you don't grow, your role will probably become irrelevant or less important as a startup grows, as our needs evolve. So the growth mindset and the ability to acquire new skills on the job or look for other resources to kind of upskill yourself is very, very important. And then we operate as a team. We're a small team. We're only about 30 odd people. So it's very important for people to know how to work with each other because you will be interacting with other team members on a daily basis. And that's really, really key to making the company successful.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So how do you approach employee development or career growth within your company? So let's say someone gets hired, how do they sort of take it to the next step?
Absolutely. So there are different tracks that we have available in the company, and it's a little bit up to the person that's hired to kind of let us know which track they'd want to follow. So if maybe they want to stay technical, then we would invest in them upskilling technically and then making them a subject matter expert as they kind of build their career within a given field. Say you want to focus on infrastructure, but want to become a principal infrastructure engineer going forward. So we'll invest in training courses, mentorship opportunities to get you up to that skill set. If you want to become a manager, then we'd kind of work with you on starting you off maybe as a team leader once you have a certain level of seniority within the company, and then kind of start figuring out, okay, what do the next steps look like for you? If you want to transition horizontally, maybe moving from, say, customer success into product management, so you're going from sales into product, then we come up with a plan of how to kind of develop you in this role, give you some training, and then what skills can be easily transferable from this sort of a role into a product role. So there's multiple opportunities, and usually the team members are the ones who help us understand what they want to achieve in the long run. And we tailor their development plan according to what they would like.
That's awesome. Sounds like there's a lot of support for employees, which is definitely important, at least when I'm looking for a job. So do you have any advice for students or professionals if they were to go through an interview? Are there any things they should definitely do or definitely not do?
Absolutely. So definitely put up your GitHub or portfolio document or portfolio link on your resume that you submit, because that makes our lives 100 times easier. Too often we've seen great resumes without GitHub links. And then we go in and start interviewing the candidates or send a skills assessment, but it's not the right skill set, or people aren't, they seem really good, but it's not a good match for us. So that's definitely very important. Secondly, do expect a technical assessment. So if for technical roles, you should have sound technical knowledge of the role you've applied for, whether it be infrastructure deployment or the web design roles. beyond that, just be comfortable during the interview process and work on your interview skill sets in terms of being very personable, having concrete examples of teamwork, adaptability, and when you've had to push yourself above and beyond. Those all help you stand out as a candidate.
Awesome. So what would you say makes i50 a unique company?
I would probably say our focus on the people. I think that might be a little bit cliche, but we really focus on people development, and we believe the team members are what differentiate us in the global market, and that's the most important ingredient for a startup, in our opinion. So we would say the amount of investment we put into our people and their growth and the opportunities we provide to them to actually see their work come to fruition, which a lot of times if you go work for a large company, you don't really see. So it's, yeah, that's what I would say is our secret sauce, maybe.
Awesome. Other companies need some of that sauce. So what would you say is your favorite thing about working at i50?
My favorite thing, I get to work with super smart people. And that's probably my favorite thing, because working with smart people, I get to grow, learn, and then just seeing them produce the work they produce. What the company was in 2018 is completely different to what it is now, both technologically and in terms of the market development. And that's thanks to the smart people I get to work with who've helped us navigate the different roads and the different challenges to get us into this sort of a position. So I enjoy that very much.
That's great to hear. And I believe that would help promote a very good company culture.
I would think so. At least I would
All
hope
right.
so.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to answer all of those questions, and congratulations on the growth of your company so far.
Thank you.
So we will move into the Q&A portion of the event where Khizer will answer some questions from the audience. This is a reminder, if you do have any questions that have come up or any that you're thinking of now, use the Q&A box and we will do our best to address those questions. Also, if there's a question that you really like and that you would really like to see answered, you can upvote it just to show your interest. Okay, so the first question is anonymous, but it says, how do you feel about remote help versus in-house or local employees? I believe this question may be a bit different, as I know that you were originally based in Silicon Valley.
Yes, so we've kind of had to adapt from in-office to remote to hybrid now. We operate in 7, 8 different countries at this point, with operations in 4 countries and customers in 6, 7 different countries. So we are very spread out. And for that, we definitely need to work effectively in a remote manner. It does really depend on the job you're applying for. So for infrastructure-based engineers, ideally, we like them having a hybrid arrangement in Windsor or in Toronto, primarily because we're doing really high impact projects there, and there's a lot of exploration that has to be done. And from what we found, it's easier for our team members to work together if they're able to see each other a couple of times a week. If you're in sales or even in web development, that remote work actually worked really well for us through the pandemic. And so for those sort of roles, maybe 100% remote wouldn't be out of the question, although we are now kind of preferring a bit of a hybrid approach, just because we've seen that approach gives people flexibility, but also enough time to meet each other and do in-person brainstorming, which in our experience has resulted in good overall, not just productivity, but morale as well. People don't feel as isolated.
Okay, awesome. So does i50 hire new graduates in tech, or do you provide co-op opportunities?
Both, actually. So we hire a lot of new grads and people just entering tech. If you have the right skill set and the right mindset, you are definitely a good fit for us. And we just recently hired 2 new grads. We do have co-op opportunities too. and it's kind of on a case by case basis. So sometimes we will get a resume and we think the candidate is amazing. So we'll hire them as a co-op with the view that after their co-op, maybe they go back to school for a little bit, and then we can hire them for another co-op, and then we hire them full time. So our senior infrastructure engineer at this point started off as a co-op with us and did maybe I think 3 or 4 co-ops, and we loved him so much that we just brought him on as a full-time hire, and now he plays a pivotal part in the company. Everyone kind of goes to him, and he's a Windsor grad actually, so we met him right here.
Awesome. That's a success story.
Yep.
Great. I'm just going through the questions we've got here in the side. So it says, how does someone pivot into a tech role? So I'm assuming this is someone from a non-technical background. Do you have any recommendations on someone who's just starting out in their role in tech?
Yes, so I would say a lot of skill sets are transferable from other industries into tech. It really depends on where you kind of see yourself moving into tech. So one of the key areas might be, say you want to start working in web development for a tech company, but right now you're doing web dev somewhere else. So that's pretty easy to move in because you kind of already have the knowledge about it. Now, say you are you want to be a web developer, but right now you are a technician working for a manufacturing company. So maybe you take the boot camp route, go through a boot camp, and then apply for tech jobs at a tech company, and that should still be really good. If you're doing sales, then most of your skill set is going to be transferable to tech. A lot of our sales team members came from, say, auto dealerships where they work as car salesmen, and now they are selling software for us. So it really depends. In some cases, the skills are easily transferable. In other cases, you might have to go through a boot camp or some sort of nano academy like on Udacity to gain the skill set to go and work for a tech company.
I think that's quite interesting that you mentioned that, because it seems to be a trend where it's sort of acceptable to obtain these micro credentials rather than an essential degree or diploma from a university. So definitely important to reflect on if you are a student going through. These are important things that you can add to your resume just to make you stand out a little bit. So we do have another question in the chat. Hi, new here, even newer grad from a web dev BC. Rather than what I need to know in languages or tool sets, what are some things as a web dev I can do to cater to help you or your company? I think this person is looking for employment.
Yeah, so one of the things that in terms of skill sets, and this is kind of more of a philosophy to be aware of, and this is not just in dev, but all aspects, but since this question is related to dev, I'll speak specifically about that. But having good knowledge of DevOps, and it's a very broad philosophy, so it covers a lot of different aspects, but having a good understanding of how DevOps works is definitely something very useful as a web developer, because going forward, that is kind of what's going to be differentiating companies. Even now, that's what differentiates good companies from companies that don't operate that well. And having a strong foundation in DevOps really sets you up for success as in a web dev role.
Okay, that's a great answer. The next question is, what are the tech stacks used in web developer roles, and are you currently hiring?
So the tech stack we use in web dev is React, so React.js, Node.js. Those are the major ones we're utilizing with backend SQL databases. Are we currently hiring? I don't think we have a web dev position open as of this moment. What we have a plan to hire within the next 2 months. So if you are interested, you can send your resume to careers@i50.com and we can evaluate and take a look.
Okay, that's great news. Okay. What are some tips to make a more competitive GitHub portfolio?
Having projects where you've contributed significantly helps a lot, and where your contribution is highlighted, where we can easily see your skill set, and be able to kind of give ourselves a confidence that, okay, this person has built this project up from scratch or made a significant contribution to some sort of an open source project. And we look at how many commits you're doing, how often you're doing commits. So the more often you're doing commits, it kind of shows us you're more active. Again, and then having substantial projects in there where we can easily validate that you've made a substantial impact on this particular project. And then those things will also surface during the interview process, but at least that'll help us bring you in and send you the technical assessment after reviewing that. And once you pass, then we'll kind of open up those questions about your GitHub.
Okay, that's great. So in our chat here, we have the market for AI and CV engineers is very competitive. How do associate level engineers break into the industry?
It is competitive, but I guess it also really depends on you standing out as an engineer. Most of the engineers we're hiring now are junior engineers and not necessarily senior engineers. But what we look at is their potential to grow and the knowledge they already have that they're bringing in. And though that becomes kind of clear during the technical assessment. So typically we'll look at your resume, see if you have experience, depending on the role, that's relevant to that particular job role, and then look at your GitHub. If we see that there's a strong profile, then we'll send you a technical assessment. If you pass it well, we move you forward to the interview process. And if you stand out, usually, even if you're a junior, we'll hire you. For the most part, we actually hire junior engineers and then grow them within the company.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm trying to look through the questions here. I see, how is the IT job market now? I tailor my resume according to jobs, but I don't hear back. Maybe listening to some of the previous recommendations would be beneficial for that individual. Let me look through here now. Do you have any opportunities for volunteers to support any research projects?
So we actually have multiple research projects right now, with the U of Windsor as well as Toronto Metropolitan University. We typically either go through MyTax or NSERC, or sometimes OCI, the Ontario Center of Innovation, for those sort of collaborative projects. But we definitely have a lot of collaboration going on. And the professors we work with typically post up those open positions on their LinkedIns sometimes, and then people apply to it and they select the right candidates.
That sounds great. What are the technical assessments like for web developer roles? How can we better prepare for it?
So the technical assessments will test knowledge of your front end, back end, and then databases to some extent. If you have a good foundational knowledge, which most people who come out of bootcamp usually have very good foundational knowledge of web development and the different technology stacks that are being utilized, along with how to design algorithms to accomplish a certain task, you should easily be able to pass the technical assessments. So having strong foundations is key.
Nothing to be afraid of then. You're prepared.
Yes.
Awesome. I see. How do candidates who have a degree from outside of Canada and 1 year of experience in web development, or how do you look at? Is that something that fits your credentials, or?
Absolutely. So in all honesty, we look at candidates from all over. So we know Canada is where a lot of immigrants land, and it takes time to get Canadian work experience, and sometimes it's harder for immigrants to get a Canadian job as well. So we do look at degrees from everywhere. And what we care more about is not the degree, but what you can do. And that's why we utilize GitHub. So someone might have a great degree, but then we look at their GitHub and there's not as much work there and they haven't contributed to any substantial projects, versus someone might not even have a degree, but they've gone through a boot camp and produced some really great projects that we validate in GitHub. We would definitely prefer the candidate who has real world experience and kind of has those projects. And it doesn't really matter if they have a degree from Canada, outside of Canada, and how much work experience they have.
That's good to know. All right. I think we have one more here. So it says many companies for entry-level roles are asking for 3 to 5 years of experience. How to tackle this popular trend every company is following. This person has 2 years of experience, intern and full-time, as well as is a recent graduate.
Honestly, I'm not sure why for entry-level roles company put that on there, especially for tech roles, because for our side, our expectation is not that at all. We look at, again, as I mentioned, your knowledge, how strong your foundations are, and then the rest we believe are going to be, we can develop you. And a lot of learning is done on the job. So 3 to 5 years experience for entry level just doesn't make sense to us. We would look at people coming right out of school, maybe with an internship or a couple of co-ops, but they know their foundations and they have strong foundations depending on the job they've applied for.
Okay. And does it matter how old the project is? Someone had asked if 2 years is too long for the project to be on their experience.
I don't think it really matters if you have continuous projects after that too. If say you have an old project that you've worked on, and then we can somehow validate that you've done other substantial work up until now, we'll consider all of the work. It's we don't really deduct any points.
Okay, that's great. And someone else mentioned, I have more than 4 years of work experience as backend software developer, but my company was a banking company. That is why my GitHub isn't attractive. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, actually, in that case, we have had candidates like that where they couldn't put their information or couldn't put the code onto GitHub, or it's in a private repository because of security reasons and privacy reasons. So if your resume then highlights the work you've done, specifically what you did, what languages and frameworks you used, what were the outcomes, that can give us the comfort of knowing that, okay, this person knows what they're talking about and kind of fits the description of this job, then we would still send you a technical assessment. And we've done that for some candidates who we looked at the resume was phenomenal. So we were like, okay, maybe they couldn't submit the code to GitHub or commit it to GitHub, or maybe it's in a private repository somewhere because they're working on government work and they couldn't put it in on an open public repository.
Top secret.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. Do certain projects make more sense than others depending on what position they are being looked at? For example, if I made you a battleship game using Ruby on Rails, would that appeal to you at all, rather than something having to do with AI prompts or API usage using Reacts?
Absolutely. So languages can be learned. What we're looking at is the work you've done and kind of how substantial that work was, and does that give us a good assessment of how well you can produce production ready code? And if that's the case and your stack was Ruby on Rails versus a React and Node, that's completely fine.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to give it another minute, but I don't believe there are any questions unless there's any that I have missed. I do have a couple more here. So can you share some examples of projects that a new graduate may be involved in at i-50?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess it depends on the role. So if you come in as an infrastructure engineer, you will be designing tools to make deployment engineers more productive. So very core, lower level stuff, which could include designing of an entire new test environment for a production code to run in, or the designing of a data annotation tool, or rewriting an entire AI library for optimizing performance. If you're a deployment engineer, you'll be thrown into the line of fire within like a couple of months of joining the company and deploying on client projects. Sometimes you might have to go on site. Most of the time you'll have to deploy remotely, but deploying client projects, putting them into production and then ramping up really quickly, figuring out how to utilize the data pipeline, developing the data pipeline itself, training up models. So it really depends on the role. But one of the things is you kind of, as soon as you come in, the ramp up period is really quick, and then you start getting productive very, very soon. So one of our team members who joined this Monday and today is Thursday, is already working on infrastructure work and already has his tasks assigned for that work.
Great. Right into it. I like it.
Absolutely.
How would you say i-50 handles work-life balance? And what would you say is in place to sort of ensure that your employees are doing okay?
Absolutely. So we're always trying to strive to make work-life balance better. And in some cases, it works better. Other cases, it doesn't. And then we're always trying to figure out how to make things work more smoothly. Typically, at least for our engineers, we tell them to log off after a certain time on the day, and they don't really need to respond to any urgent requests after, say, 5 or 6 p.m. To keep them more productive, we tell them, okay, just have certain times when you have Slack on so you don't get bothered, and so you can actually get work done and not have to do work after hours or on a weekend. Beyond that, as a manager, we all tell every single team member of ours to not work the weekends or after hours, or like if they have to, why is it really needed, and can we help them not do that? And so that's a continuous improvement process. Unfortunately, because we're a startup, sometimes we have to end up working long hours because we have very challenging clients. But every kind of day, we're trying to make sure that we give our employees a better work-life balance. And that's why we kind of have a remote/hybrid work environment too, where people get that flexibility to work from home when they want, but then come into the office other days to be able to interact with other team members.
I think both are important, and it was mentioned in our side chat that someone prefers hybrid work as well. Okay, a couple more questions in the chat here. So what resources would you recommend to those that wish to stay updated and engaged with past, present, and future technological advancements? That's a big one.
There's a lot of newsletters where you can consume that information from. So I use this a newsletter called Morning Brew, and they have like a tech brew section. I look at Axios, TechCrunch, Engadget. There's so many resources out there where you constantly can stay up to date with technology. There's webinars that I sign up for to learn about the new advancements. NVIDIA has webinars, AWS has webinars. And those are the major areas I use. And then just keeping in touch with the academic community through our research projects, but also through my team members who we have a Slack channel where they'll put out any new publication that came out. And then we'll look at that. I'll read through the papers, see if that makes sense, and then kind of work through there. And then sometimes it comes from our investors as well. They'll look at like, oh, have you considered this? Have you looked into this?
That's great. I would say that's about all the questions that we have for today. If your question was not answered, we would encourage you to follow up with Khizer on LinkedIn. His LinkedIn has been posted in the webinar chat. But thank you everyone for all of your great questions today. We'd also like to thank Khizer and i-50 for sharing insights and advice for students and professionals across the region. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. But before we say goodbye, we do have a couple announcements. So registration is now open for our Tech Connect Thursday. So we do have an exclusive event coming called Career Coaching Office Hours. So there are only 25 seats available. So we would like to ensure that the audience is giving our guest speaker full attendance, as well as being quite engaged. So that if that's something that you're interested in getting more information about, feel free to answer myself or reach out to myself as well. You will also get a follow-up email from us tomorrow with the video link as well as any of the resources discussed in today's session. As well, your feedback is important to us, so please take a moment to answer the following poll. And if you have any questions or feedback, please share it by email with info@wetech-alliance.com. Okay, so our poll should be available now on the screen for you. So please take a couple minutes to fill that out. But this includes today's Tech Connect Thursday. So thank you all for attending. Hopefully you have learned and enjoyed today's session. A big thank you as well to Emily Roback from our team for helping us today with the event production. Until next time, please stay plugged into the regional tech scene, and thanks for coming.